Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button because today we're re-diving into something that affects millions of people but is often deeply misunderstood: panic attacks. If you've ever experienced one, you know how absolutely terrifying they are. Your heart races like it's going to explode out of your chest. You can't catch your breath. You feel dizzy or disconnected from reality. Your hands tingle or go numb. You're convinced something is catastrophically wrong, and your mind is screaming that you're dying, having a heart attack, or losing control. And if you haven't experienced one, it can be really hard to understand why someone having a panic attack can just calm down or breathe or realize it's not real. But here's the thing: panic attacks are very real. They involve complex physiological processes happening in your brain and body, and understanding the science behind them is actually one of the most powerful tools for managing them. So today we're breaking down exactly what happens in your brain and body during a panic attack, why they occur, why they feel so overwhelming, and most importantly, why understanding the mechanics can help reduce their power over you. Let us start with a definition. A panic attack is a sudden episode of intense fear or discomfort that reaches peak intensity within minutes and involves multiple physical and psychological symptoms. The key word here is sudden. Panic attacks often seem to come out of nowhere, though we'll talk about why that's not quite accurate. During a panic attack, you experience a cluster of symptoms that can include racing or pounding heart, sweating, trembling, or shaking, shortness of breath, or feeling smothered, feeling of choking, chest pain or discomfort, nausea or abdominal distress, feeling dizzy or lightheaded, chills or heat sensations, numbness or tingling, feelings of unreality or detachment from yourself, fear of losing control or going crazy, and fear of dying. You need at least 4 of these symptoms to meet the clinical definition of a panic attack, but many people experience even more. Now here's what's actually happening in your brain during a panic attack. And this is where the science gets really interesting. At the center of a panic attack is your amygdala, which is your brain's threat detection and alarm system. The amygdala's job is to identify danger and trigger your survival response, and it's incredibly good at its job, perhaps too good. When your amygdala perceives a threat, whether real or imagined, it activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is basically your body's stress response system. This triggers the release of stress hormones, primarily adrenaline and cortisol, which flood your bloodstream and prepare your body for fight or flight. This is the same response that would activate if you encountered a predator or a life-threatening situation, and it happens automatically, before your thinking brain even has time to evaluate whether there's actually danger. Here's the crucial thing. Your amygdala can trigger this response based on internal cues, not just external threats. It can respond to physical sensations, thoughts, memories, or even subtle changes in your body chemistry. This is why panic attacks can seem to come out of nowhere. The trigger might be something internal that you're not consciously aware of, like a slight increase in heart rate from caffeine, a fleeting anxious thought, or a physical sensation that your brain misinterprets as danger. Let's break down what the adrenaline surge actually does to your body, because understanding this explains every single symptom of a panic attack. Adrenaline's job is to prepare you to fight or flee from danger. So it redirects blood flow from your extremities and digestive system to your major muscle groups. This is why you might feel numbness or tingling in your hands and feet, and why you might feel nauseous or have that dropping sensation in your stomach. Your heart rate increases dramatically to pump more blood and oxygen to your muscles. This is that racing, pounding heart sensation. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow to take in more oxygen. This creates the feeling of breathlessness or being smothered. And ironically, this rapid breathing can actually cause you to take in too much oxygen and not enough carbon dioxide, creating a state called hyperventilation, which causes additional symptoms like dizziness, lightheadedness, and tingling. Your pupils dilate to take in more visual information about the threat. This can make lights seem brighter and contribute to feelings of unreality. You start sweating to cool your body down in preparation for physical exertion. Your muscles tense up, ready for action. This creates trembling and can cause chest tightness or pain. And your digestive system essentially shuts down because digesting food is not a priority. When you're supposedly running from a tiger, every single symptom you experience during a panic attack is your body doing exactly what it is designed to do. When facing mortal danger, the problem is that there is no actual danger, but your body doesn't know that. Now, let's talk about the cognitive component, because panic attacks aren't just physical, there's a psychological feedback loop that makes them worse. When you start experiencing these intense physical sensations, your thinking brain tries to make sense of what's happening. If you don't understand that it's a panic attack, your brain often interprets the symptoms as evidence of catastrophe. Racing heart must mean heart attack. Difficulty breathing must mean you're suffocating. Dizziness must mean you're about to faint or have a stroke. Feelings of unreality must mean you're going crazy. This interpretation creates more fear, which triggers more adrenaline release, which intensifies the physical symptoms, which increases the catastrophic interpretation, and you're now in a vicious cycle where fear feeds physical symptoms, which feed more fear. This is called catastrophic misinterpretation. And it is a key factor in why panic attacks feel so overwhelming and why they escalate so quickly. Your thoughts are literally fueling the biological response, creating a self-reinforcing panic spiral. There's also something called interoceptive conditioning, which is a fancy way of saying your brain learns to associate certain physical sensations with panic. Once you've had a panic attack, your brain becomes hypervigilant to any physical sensation that resembles the beginning of one. So maybe during your first panic attack, you noticed your heart racing. Now, anytime your heart rate increases, for any reason, exercise, caffeine, excitement, climbing stairs, your brain might interpret that as the start of another panic attack, which triggers actual panic. You've essentially conditioned your brain to fear normal physical sensations. And this is why panic attacks can seem to multiply over time and why people often develop anticipatory anxiety about having another panic attack. Let's discuss why panic attacks peak and then subside, because this is actually really important to understand. Adrenaline and cortisol are powerful hormones, but they're metabolized relatively quickly. Adrenaline has a half-life of just a few minutes. So even though a panic attack feels like it might last forever, or even kill you, the actual peak of physiological arousal typically lasts only about 10 minutes. And then your body begins to naturally calm down as the stress hormones are processed and your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, starts to activate and counterbalance the stress response. Most panic attacks last between 5 and 20 minutes, though the residual effects like feeling shaky or exhausted can last longer. This is crucial information because one of the most powerful interventions for panic attacks is simply knowing that they will pass. They cannot hurt you, and your body will naturally return to baseline. The panic attack cannot maintain its peak intensity indefinitely. It's physiologically impossible. Now let's talk about what makes someone prone to panic attacks. Because not everyone who experiences stress has panic attacks. There are several risk factors. Genetic predisposition plays a role. You have family members with panic disorder or anxiety disorders. You're at higher risk. Temperamental factors matter. People who are more sensitive to physical sensations, who have higher baseline anxiety, or who tend toward negative interpretation of ambiguous situations are more vulnerable. Major life stress, particularly transitions or losses, can trigger panic attacks. Certain substances like caffeine, nicotine, or stimulant medications can lower your threshold for panic. And crucially, having that first panic attack is itself a major risk factor for having more. Because now you've developed fear of the physical sensations and situations associated with panic. There's also a difference between having occasional panic attacks and having panic disorder. Panic disorder is diagnosed when you have recurrent, unexpected panic attacks, and you develop persistent worry about having additional attacks or significant behavioral changes because of the attacks, like avoiding situations where you might panic. Many people with panic disorder develop agoraphobia, which is fear and avoidance of situations where escape might be difficult or help might not be available if you panic. This can lead to avoiding crowds, public transportation, open spaces, or even leaving home. The panic attacks themselves are terrifying, but the fear of having them and the life restrictions that develop from avoidance can be even more disabling. Let's discuss common triggers and types of panic attacks, because understanding your pattern is helpful. Some panic attacks are situationally bound, meaning they occur consistently in specific situations, like someone with social anxiety having panic attacks in social situations, or someone with a specific phobia panicking when encountering their feared object. Other panic attacks are situationally predisposed, meaning they're more likely in certain situations, but don't always occur there. And then there are unexpected or uncued panic attacks, which seem to come completely out of the blue, with no identifiable triggers, a particularly characteristic of panic disorder. However, even unexpected attacks often have internal triggers that you're not consciously aware of, like subtle physical sensations, fleeting thoughts, or physiological changes. Some people have nocturnal panic attacks, which wake them from sleep. In a state of panic, these are thought to be triggered by physiological changes during sleep, like carbon dioxide levels fluctuating or shifts in autonomic nervous system activity. Now here's where we get into the neuroscience at a deeper level, because research has identified specific brain areas and neurochemical systems involved in panic. Beyond the amygdala, there's also dysfunction in the prefrontal cortex, the rational, thinking part of your brain that's supposed to regulate the amygdala and evaluate whether threats are real. In people prone to panic attacks, there's often decreased connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, meaning the rational brain isn't effectively putting the brakes on the alarm system. There's also involvement of the locus coeruleus, which is the brain's main source of norepinephrine. When this area is overactive, it can trigger panic symptoms, and there's evidence of alterations in various neurotransmitter systems: serotonin, GABA, which is your main calming neurotransmitter, and the endocannabinoid system, which is involved in fear, extinction, and stress regulation. Some fascinating research shows that people prone to panic have increased sensitivity to carbon dioxide and lactate, substances that trigger feelings of suffocation and panic. This is why panic attacks often involve breathing symptoms, and why hyperventilation makes panic worse, you inadvertently triggering the suffocation alarm in your brain. So what do you actually do when you're having a panic attack or want to prevent them? First, and this is absolutely crucial, remind yourself that you're having a panic attack, not a medical emergency. Your symptoms are uncomfortable, but not dangerous. You're not dying. You're not having a heart attack. You're not going crazy. Your amygdala has activated your threat response inappropriately, and it will pass. This cognitive reframe interrupts the catastrophic misinterpretation loop. Second, focus on your breathing, but not the way people usually suggest. Don't take deep breaths. This can actually worsen hyperventilation. Instead, slow down your exhales. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for a moment. Then, breathe out slowly through your mouth for a count of 6 or 8. The long exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system and helps counteract the panic response. Third, ground yourself in the present moment, using your senses. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This engages your prefrontal cortex and helps override the amygdala's panic. Fourth, accept the panic rather than fighting it. Paradoxically, accepting that you having a panic attack and allowing the sensations without resistance often makes it pass faster. Fighting it or trying to suppress it keeps your stress response activated. For longer-term management, cognitive behavioral therapy specifically for panic disorder is incredibly effective. It teaches you to identify and challenge catastrophic thoughts and gradually face feared situations and sensations through exposure. Medication, particularly SSRIs, can help reduce the frequency and intensity of panic attacks by modulating the underlying neurotransmitter imbalances. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, limiting caffeine and alcohol, and stress management practices all help by keeping your baseline arousal lower and your nervous system more regulated. And interoceptive exposure, where you deliberately create the physical sensations of panic in a controlled way, like spinning to create dizziness, or breathing through a straw to create breathlessness. Your brain learns that these sensations are dangerous and breaks the conditioning. If this video helped you understand panic attacks better, Please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs this information. Drop a comment if you've experienced panic attacks. What symptom is most challenging for you? And please, if you're struggling with frequent panic attacks, reach out to a mental health professional. Panic attacks are highly treatable, and you don't have to live in fear of them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.